Okay, class, so in this part we are gonna be doing the Git and GitHub setup in our virtual machine. So in my terminal here, I'm just gonna clear the terminal using the clear command. And the first thing we need to do is sign in to your GitHub account. I already did that over here, so make sure yours looks the same. Just open a tab, sign in. Then after that, we're gonna open a terminal and we're gonna run the following commands, right? So now to make sure that we're running the commands correctly, I'm just gonna open a text editor over here. I'm gonna copy this, I'm gonna paste it here. Copy this, paste it here. Then I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna paste it here. Now, here where it says your username, you're gonna type in your GitHub username. So in my case is Linux Workshop 67, right? Your username is right here. See, that's my username. That's where you're gonna find yours. Now, your email. Here's the email address you use for signing up to GitHub, right? In my case is Linux Workshop 67@gmail.com, right? And then here we're gonna just repeat our email address. So I'm just gonna copy and paste over here, right? So I'm gonna move this to the side and I'm gonna copy these commands and paste them one by one. Here, just press enter. If you want to add a passphrase for extra security, that's fine, but you gotta remember the passphrase all the time. Since this is just a setup account for testing, for development, for learning, I'm just gonna leave it empty. That's it. We're done here. Now, I'm just gonna close this because we don't need it. We're gonna use this command over here to see our public key. So I'm gonna click paste, enter, and this over here, you're gonna copy this. So just double click to highlight, copy. Now we're gonna go to GitHub, settings, SSH and GPG keys, create new key, give it a name. I'm gonna call this VM, VPC. Just give it whatever name you want. You can just say VM, CIS 106, for example, and then paste it over here. That trailing space, make sure you remove it, because if you leave it, it's gonna give you an error. Add SSH key, and you're good to go. Now, we are gonna test these settings by running this command here. SSH minus capital T git at GitHub. Paste it in your terminal and press enter. You will be prompted with this. I hate Siri. I genuinely do. Without further interruptions from the annoying machine, let's continue. Here we're gonna type yes, press enter, and if you get this message, you're good to go. If you get an error, double check your SSH key. Make sure that you don't have any trailing spaces, no typos, no nothing. Double check and you should be good to go. If you get this error, this message, you're good. If you get an error message and you can't figure it out, Slack me and we'll troubleshoot it together. Now we're gonna download our GitHub repository from GitHub, right? So this here is our GitHub repository, right? It's called CIS 106. We need this in our local computer, in our virtual machine, so that we can work with this, because we are no longer gonna upload things from the website. That's no longer gonna be possible. We're not gonna use this. And trust me, if you do it, you will find yourself in a lot of trouble. There are gonna be a lot of mismatches of files and changes, and it's gonna be a mess, and it's gonna be a pain to fix. So for this point on, everything is done on the terminal. We don't touch the graphical application. We don't touch GitHub other than to copy the URL and submitting assignments. That's it. If you find yourself with troubles, then you gotta reach out to me and we can together troubleshoot it. But trust me, if you mismatch this, it's gonna be a pain in the neck to fix. So stick to the instructions to avoid issues. Now, how do we download this to our computer? Well, there are a couple of ways to do it, but on the command line is easier. So we have this command over here. I want you to copy this, and again, we're gonna open a text editor because we don't wanna make typos here. Typos we do not want. So, here says your GitHub username here. My GitHub username is this over here, right? And then your repository name here. But what we can do is that we can just copy this. Copy. And then paste it all the way until here. Make sure you do not delete that column. Now, let's remove this space, remove this space, remove this space. Yours should look very similar to mine. Just like this. In case yours should say your username and then the name of your repository here. So we're gonna copy this command. Again, make sure that you're spelling this correctly, otherwise you're gonna get an error message. And then we're gonna paste it over here. Paste. But before I press enter here, I wanna open a file manager. Notice that this here, this is your home folder, your home directory where all your files exist. There is no folder called CIS-106. Notice what happens when I press enter in the computer. It downloaded my repository called CIS-106 and it's the folder over here. The files that I have here are the exact same files that I have over here. What we're gonna do now is that we're gonna arrange this in a way that it makes sense, right? Because we don't want to mess. We don't want some spaghetti and rice mixed in over here. We want this very nice and pretty, because a nice and organized repository makes for an easier to understand course. So we are gonna create a folder here, and we're gonna call this folder labs, right? All our labs are gonna be inside here. So we're gonna go in here, we're gonna create a new folder. This folder is gonna be called lab 1. Press enter. Now I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna copy all my files here. I'll move it in here. And then I'm gonna copy all of this, not copy, move, and I'm gonna move it inside lab 1. There you go. We got a folder called lab 1. Perfect. Now, I'm gonna send these changes to VS Code, right? And for that, we need to run a couple of commands. We're gonna do this like this, right? So I want you to open VS Code. Then click on Open Folder and click on CIS-106. This is your project. This is your repository. This is the folder where you're gonna do all the work for my class. Click on Open. And notice that we have here our nice structure that we created earlier. Good. Now we're gonna click on Terminal, New Terminal, and we're gonna type the following commands. We're gonna do git pull. This command makes sure that our computer and our GitHub repositories match, that they are up to date. Now we're gonna do git add period. This is gonna add all the files in our repository to be tracked. Done. Now we're gonna do git commit -m. Here we need to put a message, right? Because this commit needs to be identified. We need to be able to know what changes. We need to label the changes that we made. We're gonna call this lab 1 files organized. Press enter, and now notice that it says, hey, I renamed this. Now they were outside, now they are inside this folder, blah, 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 blah. Now we're gonna send these changes from our computer to GitHub, right? This is done with the following command, git push. And if you did the previous step correctly, you should see something very similar to what you're seeing in my computer right now. Okay, now we can close this terminal application over here. And if you open VS Code, you are gonna notice that your files are organized in VS Code just how they are in your computer. This is how we're gonna be doing all the work in the class. We do some work in the computer, we send it to VS Code. Sorry, we send it to GitHub. GitHub is gonna be software that we're gonna be using to track the changes in our class, how much we're learning, and as a secondary backup to all the stuff that happens in our computer. If our virtual machine breaks, we have everything on GitHub, so we don't worry about anything, right? Not a single thing. Everything is always on GitHub as it is in your computer. If you're following instructions correctly, you should never encounter a problem. You only encounter problems when you start doing some weird stuff, something that is not in the instructions. So make sure you follow instructions correctly. Alright, so let's move on. We already did this. We did this already, and we did this as well. Now, this is something that I suggest you do. Open a text editor over here, right? You have a text editor open and do the following. GitHub commands cheat sheet to git push git commit git push. Now save this as GitHub git commands.txt. Put it in your desktop, put it in your home directory right over here and save. If you ever forget the order in which you need to do your GitHub commands, oh sorry, I forgot one, git add period. There you go, perfect. If you ever forget the order in which you need to do your GitHub commands, first of all, I always give them to you here at the end of every lab, but also you have it saved in your local computer as well. These commands are important that you run them in the order that I described here. So please make sure you have this cheat sheet in your desktop, in your computer. I'm gonna close this over here. Now it's time to submit this lab. I'm gonna make another video talking about submitting this lab because this video is already 11 minutes long. See you in the next one.